Welcome to the Reinventors Roundtable, where each week we face up to big challenges facing the world ahead of us and actually try to grapple with some of the big solutions. And this week we're going to be grappling with climate change. And so we're going to take off a chunk of that in reinventing climate management.
What is this relationship that we can have with the planet? The lag problem with climate change is that the actions that you take with regards to altering the climate don't show evidence for another 20, 30, 50 years. We may already have committed to too much warming that even if we were to stop putting any carbon right now, we would still be tipping into a global catastrophe.
I would question a little bit the idea that there is such a thing as too late.
I think that one of the challenges that we really have is in seeing the world as it is and not as it was, not as we wish it were. The weather that we're dealing with is the weather of now, not the one of 20 years ago.
But we need to be thinking about what they will be looking like because this change is happening and because, again, it's going to keep happening even after we start making these important, critical changes.
I think that there are forms of geoengineering that we can experiment on now and that we should experiment on right away.
There's two types of geoengineering. One is called solar radiation management, which is blocking out sunlight. And the other is carbon dioxide reduction, which is sucking the CO2 out of the atmosphere. People have said, what if we get to a planetary emergency where it's still too hot and those aren't working? Then what do we do? And the question is, does solar radiation management make it even more dangerous or does it make it less dangerous?
We should be funding more R&D into many, many different types of geoengineering, and it's possible that none of them will work out, but we would be remiss in not at least knowing what the options were.
The real goal of this kind of research isn't just to have something in our back pocket, it's actually to know what not to do.
I think the moral position should be that if you're interested in considering geoengineering at any point, you should be interested in considering whether you can design a form of geoengineering that you would be willing to accommodate now for yourself.
People are working on the technology to do it. There is no technology today to do it.
Never do I hear specifics about why we should not be prioritizing experiments on the only form of geoengineering that can be gently eased in, and that emulates exactly what happens in nature.
Learning from and adapting what nature does is a core sensible strategy here. We've got 3.8 or so billion years of R&D available to guide us in the kind of ecosystem modification we do.
Don's referred to it as ecological engineering.
These are technologies, in a sense, that can pull CO2 out of the atmosphere, and I'm really interested in kind of mechanisms that we can see like that. And do we consider them a form of geoengineering?
Almost all these environmental, ecological things are not going to make an impact at the N billion tons of carbon a year level that you have to do to make an impact on the climate problem.
I would contend that the ecological engineering approaches that we have access to have a fairly significant opportunity to really start changing how we look at both mitigation as well as adaptation.
What can members of our audience do? How can they participate in solutions?
Unless you reduce the driving profit pressure of one of the largest concentrations of capital on the planet, everything else we're doing is just icing on the cake. Sheikh Zaki Yamani said 40 years ago, the petroleum age is going to end not because we run out of petroleum any more than the Stone Age ended because we ran out of stones. Prosperity without petroleum has got to be the key in this century and the next.
How we think about the world affects the choices that we make. And if we trap ourselves into only thinking about failure, we will start to ignore the choices that we can make that will lead us to success.